I will start getting started. I really love this statement when we're talking about stress, and today we're going to talk about burnout, and we're going to talk about how we can bounce back from burnout. And I love this statement that distress spelled backwards is desserts. And I also love this statement that life is short, eat dessert first. I also know what happens to me when I do, air quotes, things out of order. And I've also figured out that for me, that if I'm going to bounce back from anything, I need something to bounce from. And since I don't assume that I am so unique, I think that is everybody. So what I think maybe I should have titled this webinar is Finding Your Bouncy Place. Or y'all can title it anything you want, as long as it is something that is happy for you and makes you think about something that keeps you on your course of bouncing back from recovery. And I am going to get on with this now. And here we talk about trauma as if it's a stress that overwhelms a person's ability to cope. And we understand that. And yet I think because of the work that we do in the field that we're in, we always think about trauma in the negative sense. But how about thinking about trauma in a very different sense? How about stress that overwhelms a person's ability to cope? Can you think of happy things that can overwhelm you and cause you a momentary lapse of ability to cope, and how you moved on from them? Okay, there will be, you know, we always know when we're working with victims that, especially victims of violent crimes, that they always thought that they weren't going to survive this. They were somehow going to die. If I can find the pin, let me find the pin for the access code. Okay, here it is. All right. If you cannot hear me over the phone, over the web, here is the phone to call in and the access code. All right. Okay, so I'm thinking about what would be good stress. Oh dear. Okay, what would be good stress that momentarily stops you in your tracks? I've known it for me, and I've known it for other people when the first time one of my children came to me and told me that they were going to get married, and I just was so excited for them, and yet I was so overwhelmed about all that entailed and all the planning that went into it, and how was I going to find the time for that? And even though it was a happy occasion, it was also something that was kind of overwhelming. Where did I get, or where do you all get, when something even good happens to you with that stress? How do you cope with it? How does it come back to you? How do you move forward? Because once I understood that I didn't need to do this by myself, it became easier to plan a wedding. Okay? But the responses that most of the times that we have when I talk about bouncing back from burnout, I'm going to use a couple of terms interchangeably. I'm going to use vicarious trauma, which means getting trauma from somebody else. I'm going to use secondary trauma, also meaning vicarious trauma, meaning that you can get it just by hearing or seeing or feeling the other person's trauma, and also by, and so those are the things I'm going to use, or just plain burnout. So we know that exposure to traumatic events can produce profound and lasting changes to a person's emotional, cognitive abilities, to their memory, and also to their philosophy of life. Can you think of other things that that might change for a person who is being exposed to trauma, especially multiple traumas? What else may be changing for them? How about their quality of life, and now being constantly hyper alert and being aware? How about their friendships? How about their relationships in general, their partnership, the type of work that they may do? So all of these things can be very overwhelming when we talk about stress, especially in the job that we do. So I would ask you, how many stories do you hear in a day? How many? And not just from your job, but not just from your job, because we hear it from our children, from our partners, from our friends. Sometimes I think that somebody's looking at me and the answer is magically appearing on my forehead without me even knowing it. So as professional caretakers, and we are professional caretakers, we routinely put ourselves in the world of other people's traumas. We have clients and friends and co-workers who process their circumstances with us in the hope of getting back to normal. And many times we hear the same stories over and over and over again. And that's their want to get back to normal. So, you know, I kind of think of it like, did you ever have a friend who went through a divorce and they keep telling you all the circumstances and you've heard it? It's because they're trying to find an emotional home for it somewhere. They're trying to find a place where it resonates so they can put it to rest. Basically, I believe that we got into this line of work because of our empathy and attunement to others, which causes us to bring what we see and what we hear into our own experience. And this is what creates that mindset of our own vulnerabilities to vicarious trauma. We become vulnerable to the same feelings of lack of control, fear, anger, and can end up living the trauma of others. And I will give you an example. I have a friend who is a CSI agent. She worked for a police department. One day she was called out for a case to collect evidence, and she went, and it happened to be a very brutal stabbing of a young girl who was the same age as her daughter. She couldn't get it out of her mind, and it started to impact her in everything that she did. She ended up leaving her job and becoming a science teacher. So we're going to talk about some of those things that give us the strength to take it in and then to get out of our own way to transform it into something else. Okay, so I would say to you that stress or being exposed to a traumatic event is a natural response that the body has to an abnormal situation. And I'm going to sort of breeze through the neurobiology very quickly here, but there's also estimated that 70% of the adults in the United States have experienced a traumatic event at least once in their lives. I think that's very true. I would pose this question. What if Sidran had asked that question of advocates in helping professions and in our professions? What do you think the estimate then would be, or the percentage of people who would say that, yes, they've experienced at least adults a traumatic event once in their life? I think it would be pretty close to 100%. And I think that that would be a fairly accurate way to state that. Okay. All right. So I'm going to talk about neurobiology very basically. This is something new that I found, the whole brain, and I'm going to kind of breeze through it. Just picture our brains as a house. We have upstairs and we have a downstairs. And the downstairs is where the important, quote, things happen. It's, we have the functions downstairs like breathing and innate reactions to danger like the fight, flight, or freeze. And it's the downstairs of the house where the cooking and the living rooms, that's where we do our basic stuff. The upstairs brain is more complex. It is about thinking, but it's also about imagining and future planning and critical thinking and problem solving and decision making. And this is what we do, and we don't think about it, we just do about it. But this upstairs part is basically not formed until our mid-20s, and depending on circumstances or how traumatized we have been, sometimes not even until our early 30s. So we need to think about that. When we get traumatized, we come from the upstairs and we go all the way downstairs. And I say that there is like a bleach reaction that happens because the cortisol, which is, I say, an atomic bomb of bad neurochemicals happens. They go out and it just bleaches the brains of experience. It is about survival. We're going to the downstairs brain. And the upstairs immediately disconnects from the downstairs, and the downstairs brain takes over. What the downstairs brain will record is all those sensory perceptions that are present at the moment, like sight, smell, sound, hearing, but it's bleaching out the experiences to the upstairs brain. The upstairs brain then, in other words, has no idea of what is happening to it at all. It just keeps going on. So that's where our triggers come from when we see what happens when something reminds us of that initial traumatic stress. Okay, so what's happening in the body is the effects of stress. And what scientists are beginning, or research is beginning to find out, is when those bad neurochemicals are released into the body, they hang around for 4 or 5 days. And what if you're re-triggered within those 4 or 5 days, and re-triggered after that, and re-triggered after that? So it means many things. You may be particularly angry or irritable or depressed. There's going to be an increase in blood pressure, so you're at risk for a heart attack. The immune system kind of shuts down because it's preparing for fight, flight, to get out of here, or freeze, to protect yourself from outside, not necessarily from the microbes. You're going to have more muscle aches and joint pains, and you're going to lower your bone density. These are all icky things. Tummy troubles. These are not the good things that happen. Stress really, really messes with our body. Okay. All right. So here are some of the ways that stress can mess with the body. And what burnout basically means is that there is an imbalance between the emotional energy that we are giving out and the emotional energy we are taking in. And this is a really powerful sign that things are not working appropriate for us. You ever go or say things or come home and say, I feel depleted, or you feel anxious or powerless or hopeless, or you have a decreased lack of self-confidence or your self-image? This also disturbs when we have these less than feelings. Our usual coping mechanisms can start to fail us, which makes us feel even worse. And then we've got this looping around of what is going on. And we find the low performance, and you can see all of this, the low performance or morale at work, avoiding certain tasks or subjects. We have the personal relationships where we withdraw from or isolate ourselves from others. We've got the somatic experiences. We've got the questioning of life. We get angry. We get, behavioral that we talked about, emotional reactions to things. People say to us, God, or I've heard people say to me, God, you're super sensitive since you took this job. Or we feel like we're on an emotional roller coaster, or any or all of these things. And these are important things to remember. The other important thing to remember is that the trauma is always, always, always in the eye of the beholder. What is traumatic to me is not necessarily traumatic to you. And this is basically true. We've got what we call the triune brain, the three parts of the brain. This is kind of the seminal work. The frontal cortex, which is the upstairs, the limbic system, which is the downstairs, and the reptilian brain, which takes over in the brain stem. When trauma hits us, when we sense that something bad is happening, and when that happens, it has been documented that the blood flow to the language area of the brain is decreased. This is why people cannot remember or put into words what happens. It is usually all feelings at that point, the sensory, emotional, in the limbic system of the brain. So this happens to us as well as to our to the people that we work with, but I'm talking about us now. So this is a sequence of engagement. We have to regulate our bodies in order to relate to what is going on, in order to reason and talk about that. As adults, we want to go straight to reasoning because that's what we learned how to do, and we ignore the other signals that our bodies are sending us. In order to stop the burnout, we're going to have to figure out where we are and get to the relate, the regulate, the reason, because we can't risk the assumptions that we are making when we are stressed. Okay, so I'm going to ask you, knowing that the stress hangs around for 4 days in our bodies, do you ever have 4 stress-free days in a row? All right. I like this. I love Bessel van der Kolk because I believe he's just one of my heroes. But when we are constantly bombarded by warning signs, we are constantly feeling traumatized or listening to other stories, we begin to feel unsafe in our own bodies. And we don't like that. So we become experts at ignoring our gut feelings and in numbing the awareness of what's going on inside. We learn to hide from ourselves. And when we learn to hide from ourselves, we're not living, we're not living a full life. So I want to take us out of that and put us into a place where we can bounce back. However you want to image that in your head, a picture of a kangaroo or building blocks or cornerstones or a trampoline, however it does, it doesn't matter how a person bounces, it matters that they bounce. And so I think it's important to have that image of us building gradually up and up and up and up and up. Like I was stressed out over one of my children getting married. Once I got pen to pencil and figured out the end result is, and I like to start with the end, is the ceremony, what needs to come before that, and work it down, or you can work it up. So, in our private lives, who stresses us the most? Our parents, our teenagers, our partners, our school, our children. Who is it and what do they do? Their sisters. I was just talking to someone not too long ago saying, my sisters can push my buttons faster than anybody else in the world. And I think that is fairly true. So here's another expression I like. We do the impossible. We do it every day with our clients. We do it every day in our life. And that makes us mighty. It also makes us exhausted, and it becomes an imbalance of output to input, which is exactly what causes burnout. Okay, everybody with me so far? Is this beginning to make a little bit more sense? Okay. Okay, so what the most important part of burnout, of doing the work that we do, is to acknowledge that what we do is going to affect us. So before we move on, I want you to reflect just for a moment or two to think about why you chose this profession. And when you did anyone tell you what it would really be like? And what keeps you in this profession? And what sustains you as a professional? How does that work for you? How do you think you're making a difference? How do you know you're making a difference? And if you were to do it all over again, would you do it differently? And can you make that so? I think the self-reflection is the starting point of bouncing back from burnout. So I'm going to repeat the questions I just asked again, because I do think that they are important. And that is, what made you choose this profession? Did anyone tell you what it was really like, so you were surprised by the intensity of it or what you were going to hear? What sustains you as a professional in your professional work, and what keeps you going? How do you think you are making a difference, and how do you know that is clear and true for you? If you were to do it all over again, would you do it differently? And what would you do differently? And if you would do it differently, what can you do to make it so? That, to me, is the start of resilience. Okay, moving on. Okay, resilience we all think is something innate, but it's not. It's something that we have to learn. It's a pattern of behaviors. It's like a habit, if you will, that we can practice until it becomes second nature to us. It's got to include hope and self-worth and security and connection, okay? It's about adjusting our attitudes and perceptions, both consciously and consciously. Do you have strategies that you share with others, or strategies that you see others doing to do that? Would you care to share them right now? Okay, because part of the strategies I have when I was doing direct service was saying, I'm going to hear things today. It's not about me. It's not about my children. This has not happened to me or my children or my mom. It happened in the past. This is not happening to my sisters or my aunts or my daughters or to my sons or to my cousins or to my nephews. I need to be able to give myself some positive self-talk, and I'm going to talk about that a little later on. I'm going to have to notice my body's reactions. These are some of the things that I have done to make sure that I stay on top of myself so that I can do first aid for me and my brain. And what that means is that when I feel that I am becoming overwhelmed, that is my first clue that I'm getting stressed. I need to drink water. For me and for everyone, water kind of flushes out those bad chemicals. For me, I need to exercise, which also means that I don't send a whole lot of inner office emails. I usually get up and walk down to the person's office. I type the email when I come back, because for me, I've got to get those somatic experiences out of me. That's the way I I do it. I have to get some rest. And rest for me on the job means I might just go out and walk around the block for a minute, or just sit outside while it is sunny, so I can get some sunshine on me, that vitamin D, which is so important for our bone density, because I know that. And if it's really getting to me, that I can write down a word or two about it so that I can move forward with it or think about it later on. That's the connection. The other thing I like is my life balance wheel. Now, I happen to love wheels, but I happen to believe that wheels need to be individualized, focused things for every person, because every person focuses on something different and has their own answers. That way, it's a unique way of recovery for you, for your clients. This wheel has 8 spokes in it. If 8 spokes overwhelms you when you think you're going to have to do some balance, do one. You don't have to put a bazillion in there. You can put just 1 or 2 in there. So you can fill it out. That's all you need to do, is think of the ideas of filling it out just one at a time, because it can be overwhelming. Some people might want to add more spokes, and that's okay. That's up to you. But how do you keep your life in balance? And again, the strategies can be relatively simple. Simple does not necessarily mean easy. The only requirement for filling out a life balance wheel is your willingness to take an honest look at yourself and to move forward. I'm going to tell you at this point right now that I am going to only look at 6 spokes of this wheel. And if I look only at 6 spokes of this wheel, I'm going to identify them for you, and I am going to use them. I am getting, unfortunately, okay, I should be restored. All right. Okay. I was just saying, I got a message saying that I might have audio problems. I was just saying I'm only going to identify 6 spokes. You can identify as many or as little as you want. So the first thing that I always want to know is, what are my stressors? And the stressors can vary, because work varies, season vary, everything varies. So what are my stressors at work, and what are my stressors at home? What's on your plate? What can you say no to, and what can you say yes to? And what do you want? What are your responsibilities, basically, when I say what's on your plate? Can you list or put down your typical day from start to finish? Some people may want to break this down minute by minute. Some people may want to do it hour by hour. Some people have to do, because I do it this way, I want to include stuff about my personal life in my whole day, so I can see how my life flows from day to day. So I start off with, I turn off the alarm clock, I get up, I go brush my teeth. I make lunch for everyone. You know, I get in the car, I check my gas, I turn on the radio, I drive to work, stuff like that. Where am I getting stressed here? I'm getting stressed because I didn't make lunch the night before. I write that down on my thing. Make lunch the night before. I'm getting stressed because I left 15 minutes early and traffic is heavier than normal. So I have to do that. You know, what also is in my life when I get to work, and that is, do you wear 151 hats all at once, and you've got 1,051 more sitting in the back drawer ready for you to put on? You know, What can you change? I've also figured out that by saying no first to everything, and you don't have to come right out and say no, you can come right out and say, let me think about that, because it's easier to say yes behind a no than it is to say no after you've already committed with a yes. So think about things and find out what it is and what you would like to change. And even if you can change something by 0.5%, that can be a huge change for you. Don't laugh. It can be, because this is your very, very first bounce. Okay? You can't start doing something, by going at it 100%. That's not going to happen. You have to start small. If you want to start exercising and you think that the best way to exercise or to motivate you is by starting a marathon, and you haven't even walked around the block once, walking around the block once may be a good way to figure out just where you are, and to do that 1 time a week or 2 times a week until you're doing it 3 or 4 or 5 or every day, and then you can start expanding out and jogging or half jogging around the block. So I would also tell you that a 0.5% change is a lot more than you are doing right now. Change, as we know, can be very slow and incremental. And I want us to be aware of that. And I want to talk about that. I want us to have wake-up calls, and not of the good kind that stress us out. Like, we're so stressed out that you asked for a report that you knew was going to happen 5, 10, 15 months ago, and you haven't finished it because everything else was taking up your stuff on your plate at work. Or maybe you end up having a serious health scare. Or maybe there's someone in your life who is having a serious health scare and you're not even noticing it. Or your children are growing up and all of a sudden you realize they're grown, and how did that happen? I know 2 people right now that have been in my life. They've been mentors for me for a long time, who are now retired. One of them's been retired about 9 years, and one of them's been retired maybe 2. What I saw from both of them is once they left this field, they seriously isolated, they shut down. And when I asked my mentor, who had been retired for over 5 or 6 years at the time, what happened during those early years of her retirement, she said, you know what? It took me all that time in isolation to just de-stress from all the years of listening to other people's trauma. And I had to get it out of my body. And when I asked my second mentor, who retired about 18 months ago, why she is not being communicative, she said, I prefer to stay home and work in my garden and just get everything out of me. This was a wake-up call for me. I don't want to not be present in my life for the good things, and I do not want to get to retirement and say, ooh, I've got to spend years de-stressing from this or getting it out of me before I can enjoy my retirement. That is not my goal. So for me, the decision was to stay in my field. The decision was to find out ways to work with, for me to work with myself in order to be present every day. Now, this is going to vary for everyone. I can only use me as an example because I'm the only person I know, and I know what works for me. But to be realistic about what could give you good suggestions for self-care. Do you have some control over your schedule at work? And I know a lot of us don't, but can you change shifts around? Are you available to take off you know, when you need to, because your child's graduating from school or has a kindergarten performance or needs you for something? Do you have access to a peer support group? And I'm not talking about other advocates, although that's important to talk about what happened at work, but I'm talking like a peer support group of people who read romance novels, if that's your thing, to read it, to talk about that, or a peer support group for people who love to go to movies and deconstruct them. Those are the kinds of things I'm talking about. What, you know, because if you're going to a peer support group and all you do is talk about work, maybe you need to focus on something else. Suggestion for home and self-care. How about cooking with your family, or baking, or starting to eat a little bit healthier? Not every day and not all day every day, but being aware of what you eat and being aware of cookbooks and the fun of cooking with families and the fun of, I've had some really bad, I call them kitchen disasters, and I could write a book about them. Can you make jokes about them? Can they become part of family lore? Is that what connects you? You know, self-care at home. One of the things that I learned to do early, and I love to do it, was to read books to my children, especially when they were younger. And I would make up voices for each character. And it's become something that we now participate in, and everybody makes up a character. So it becomes fun. And that's what I'm talking about, things that give you joy. Where can you get them in your life, and how do you do that? Because that's what we need to do. Again, it's the realistic, because we can't go around feeling depleted. If we do, we have nothing to give ourselves. And if we have nothing to give ourselves, we have nothing to give other people. We are running on empty. So what I'm going to tell you is, how do you carve out free time for yourself? And filling your free time with chores is not what I'm talking about. Stop. Make the time for yourself, however small. Make the time. This is about self-care. Because if you're finding yourself constantly running on adrenaline or needing caffeine to keep you going, something is out of whack here in your life. And you've got to do something at least once a week that fills you up, that you look forward to, that restores you, that gives you fun. And this can be difficult to practice like a habit at first, because it's all habits. We've got to get out of our own way and to start creating our own our own self-care, our own habits that are good for us. And I know all too well about feeling guilty and selfish and actually resisting the urge to fill up the time with chores or excuses. You know, if I just do this one more thing. Stop. Stop doing that. You don't need to do this one more thing. I found out at home that if I practiced no for a week, and I said no to everything that people asked me, Mom, can you drive me to the store? Mom, can you drive me to the mall? And I said no, you know what happened? The children did not self-destruct. The children did not have a meltdown. And the children found other ways to get to the mall, to the store. You know, I have learned for me to make a calendar, and I plan out. And before I say yes to anything, I look at that calendar, not just the day before or the day after, but the week or the month after that. And then I block out time for me. And if someone asks me to do something in that me time, I now tell them no, because I need that time for me. That's my enjoyment time. And whatever the amount of time is, it may be 15 minutes, it may be 15 hours. It has to make sense to me, and it has to make sense to you. Part of that has to be a block off time for exercise. Exercise for me means walking, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about exercise later on. Generally, I keep my walking shoes in the trunk of my car before I go home, before I even leave the parking lot. That my habit has become to put on my walking shoes. I pull into my driveway, I get out, and I immediately walk around the block. If I say to myself, how do you feel? And I check in and I say, I feel good, then into the house I go. But if I can still hear that negative self-talk going on in my brain, damn, I can't believe this happened at work, I go around the block another time, and I keep doing it until I cannot hear that. I get that self-talk out of me. I literally have a little mantra that says, get thee gone, self-talk, get thee gone, and I'm walking you out, okay? So I want us to all think about a strategy that you can employ for you that gets you the self-care that you need both at the office and at your home, so that you're not getting to the end of, you're not going home on the weekend and all you want to do is sit there and veg out because you're so burnt out from your week. There's other things to do. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. All right. So basic self-care, renewal activities, everyday nourishing activities, and regular debriefing activities. Okay, so what are you already doing for yourself, both good and bad? This is another basic self-care, could be another spoke of your wheel. Do you keep yourself going? How do you keep yourself going? What motivates you? I had a coworker send out an email that said it's Friday afternoon and where's the chocolate? Who forgot the chocolate this time? These are things that we need to understand and know. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we take care of our coworkers? How do we take care of ourselves in context of our family and our family? So what is it that you wish you could do more of? What activities are restful to you, and how often do you do them, and how do you wish you could do them? I love to read. I wish I had more time to read in quiet spaces, away from my family and away from work. That means that I have to schedule time to go find a lake because I love to sit somewhere and look at pretty stuff, nature, and find somewhere and go read for an hour or so with my iced tea or my iced coffee, whatever it is, whatever makes me do that. And, you know, sometimes I wish I could do that more. And I pay attention to that. And if I can't find the time to go, maybe I just sit in my backyard and read and feel the sun on my face. I say access to debriefing process. I am not talking about work. I want, when I start debriefing with someone, I want it for me to be from the other person's point of view and not in my field. If I work for nonprofit field, which I do, with victims of sexual assault, I want to talk to other people who work for maybe for-profits in HR or for-profit doing marketing. How do you see this differently so that I'm not getting the same echoes of what I already think and feel? Because a lot of nonprofit agencies or NGOs all operate off of the same grants, the same kind of parameters, and so I don't want that echoed about me. I want someone who understands that what I do for a living, but I also want someone who is coming at me with some, you know, outside of the office, my office surroundings. I want to give you a word of caution, though. Debriefing about office politics with coworkers is not recommended. It's going to end up looking like gossip or backstabbing. Find someone outside of your field who does not know anyone inside of your field for their insight, for their perspective on human behavior. But doing it with your coworkers, not good. That's how I do it. For home regular debriefings, the most helpful thing that I have ever found, especially with parenting, because I believe parenting or stress is extremely stressful. I believe that children should come with operating manuals, and they don't, which makes it entirely upsetting for me. But that's just me. So what I have found was other people in my community who've already parented through that age. One person told me that when her boys were turned into teenagers about the age of 13, she just about tore out her hair, and by the age of 21, they were perfectly human again. So I decided, she told me, let them go. If it's not blood or guts, and pick your battles wisely, and they'll come back to you when they're 21 or so. I thought that was one of the best pieces of advice I got through it. Oh yeah, I parented through that, or I parented through that age, and this is what I found for me. How can you use those pieces of advice together, or something like that? I also want to talk about regular debriefings internally, your own self-talk, okay? You hear that voice going, tis, 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 or you know better than that, or that ER voice, that sad sack voice, oh my, nothing ever works out well for me, that kind of stuff. Or you imagine a rain cloud over your head, or you say to yourself, KISS, and the acronym KISS, keep it simple, and you say, stupid, why are you talking to yourself like that? Stop it. I challenge you in the name of basic self-care that every time you hear yourself talk negatively to yourself, write it down, or write down what you're saying. And what I'm going to challenge you to do is immediately after you write it down, find out something better to say, and then make yourself aware of this. This is what I mean about turning the unconscious into the conscious. So when I heard myself saying, kiss, Wendy, kiss, I went, oh no, it's going to be, keep it simple, sweetie, because I can be a sweetheart. Keep it simple, sweetie. Keep it simple, keep it simple, simple. Whatever it is, but every time I say that, that's what I have in my mind now. It's not negative, it is positive. Keep it simple, smarty. Whatever that, however you want to fill that in, that is fine. But changing that positive that negative self-talk into positive self-talk is a really great way to start building your own self-care. Okay. All righty. Any questions, anybody? Okay. Here's another spoke. The physical self-care aspect of this. Do you get regular mental or dental care? That is so important to keep you up. When was the last time you did get dental care? I'm going to tell you that I hate going to the dentist, and it takes an act of Congress to get me there, but I know that if I don't go to the dentist, I'm going to end up in worse shape, and that means I'm going to even spend more time at the dentist. Please go at least once a year. Go to your regular checkups at least once a year, and when you need to go to the doctor, please go to the doctor. Some of us may not have health insurance. Go to the county, go to the clinics, go wherever you need to go in order to do what you need to do. All right, that's very important. Sleep and rest are really important. Sleeping at least 8 to 6 hours every night. We've got to get that REM sleep in. We've got to nourish our bodies in that way. Rest is whatever you consider to be restful, whatever that is. A proper diet does not mean that you cannot eat fast food or have cookies or ice cream. A proper diet means that you're eating healthy for you most of the time. It's not all of the time. Can you have a salad with some protein in it at least 2 or 3 days a week? That's what I'm talking about. If you don't like salad, then how do you get your veggies? How do you get your carbs? How do you get that? And think about that and make conscious choices about that. Exercising, is there something you can do once a week for 30 minutes, even though it's recommended to do it 2 or 3 times? What can you do? Walking around the block may be one thing. Dancing, doing a hula hoop, taking water aerobics, whatever it is, there's many ways to do that. Do you take your vacation time without thinking about work? Are you taking vacation? Are you answering your phone? Are you answering your work emails? That's not a vacation. I'm going to talk to you about what I did on vacation with my fabulous sons. We were in a fabulous place. We were in Mexico, and I was thinking totally about work, and I was thinking about drug-facilitated sexual assaults. And so I turned around to my teenage sons and I said to them, why don't you go into that pharmacy over there and buy some Rohypnol? Oh my God, what the hell was I thinking? But those are the things that I'm talking about. I'm going to put my sons in jeopardy because I'm thinking about work and seeing, you know, this is not okay. We need to disconnect from our work from time to time. We have to have joy and happiness. So one of the things that I found out that works for me really well with the physical stuff is vision, touch, taste, smell, healing. They're all connected. And this is what I have found. I need to soothe my senses both at home and in the office so that I don't get wound up. With vision, part of it is what colors do I like? Well, I don't have a say over the colors that get painted in my office or my cubby or whatever, but I do have some control over the pictures that I put up. What pictures bring me happiness? Okay. Taste. What do I like to eat? Why do I like to eat it? And how do I describe this taste? If an alien came down, someone from Mars came to Earth and said to me, what do you find delicious? And I would say, I love eating apples. And they would say, describe the taste of the apple. How would I go about telling them what that taste is, how savory it is to me, and all that other stuff? The other thing about taste is getting adventurous about tasting other things, if that's the way you work, or combining different flavors to see what works or doesn't work. Like I said, I have a lot of kitchen disasters, but I never make the same cake the same way or the same bread the same way twice because I'm always combining different flavors to make something. Something that you can touch or hold, like in the office, not so much petting an animal. However, it may be having some stones or something that you can hold to feel to ground you, rocks, little pebbles in your office. I have a grandson who all he has is rocks in his office, and anytime he gets sad or he sees you sad, I don't know where he got this from, he'll take all these pebbles out of his hand and he'll hand them to you. Okay. Hearing. What can you hear? If listening in the office means that there are going to be other, you're listening constantly to the voices or the murmurs of others, can you get yourself earbuds? Can you listen to some music that makes you happy? You know, Can you focus in on the speaker when you're talking to someone? Can you go out and listen to children laughing? Those are the kinds of things that I'm talking about. When we're talking about smells, what smells do you like and don't like, and how can you make that accessible to you? I'm going to state something here about smells. Be very, very careful about smells invading other people's spaces, especially people with allergies. The perfume may smell like the most delicious thing for you, but somebody who has a chemical allergy, that could be totally triggering for them in the terms of them going into an allergic reaction. So please be careful with that. Okay, some of the things that we know how to do, we do grounding exercises, and I do this for myself. I will go state to me one thing that I am smelling right now, 2 sounds that I'm hearing, 3 sensations my body is feeling, 4 colors that I am seeing, and 5 things that I'm seeing in front of me. Or I can merely look around the room and state what I see and what I like and don't like about it. But I do that. I'm grounding my senses. And I think when we soothe our senses, we stay grounded. And it helps us to protect us from burnout. Okay, psychological. Self-reflection, self-care, journaling. What do all these things, the self-reflection, the self-care, and the journaling, what is needed for this to happen? What do you think? And part of what's needed to happen is that you need to have time. You need to get quiet, and you need to, I know somebody said that they can't hear me, and I'm not getting any messages from anyone else that I can't be heard. So I'm sorry about that, or even a tech announcement that they're having problems. Okay, so what we're going to do is the self-reflection, the self-care, the journaling, to get to a place where we can think about it for 5 or 10 minutes about what we're feeling now, what we're doing. Also, psychological, changing our perspective can change the way we look at what we're seeing right now. And that means also changing it, going outdoors, getting that sun on our skin for a few minutes, vitamin D, feeling the warmth of the sun. Those are important things, and it means that we need to have some alone time. And alone time means that that is a good thing for all of us. Also, psychological is getting into the habit of asking for and receiving help. It's one thing to ask for help. It's another thing to allow a person to help us receive it. In other words, man, I am so overwhelmed today, and somebody says, okay, what can I do to help you? You know, no, it's okay, I got it. Stop it. Say, you know what? If on your travels today, whether it's to the grocery store, if you pass by the post office, you can get me a roll of stamps, here's the money, that would save me time. I would so appreciate it. That's what I'm talking about. Let people help you. People want to help you. Let them help you. Your friends, your coworkers, they always want to help you. Do that. Emotional. This is what I call breaking the shame game and getting out of our own way. How do we do our affirmations? What do you say to yourself? And what feels good to you? Think about those things. Think about what you can do. Think about something that's okay. When I talk about self-compassion here, I'm talking about how do we show ourselves that we are okay? How do we show ourselves that we can get in front of ourselves and that we are human and we made a mistake and that we can do better next time? Okay? That's what I want to hear from all of us. How do we understand that? Because if we hold ourselves to a standard that nobody else does, we're not going to be good for anyone. We may be mighty. We also need to learn from our mistakes. And if we can't learn from our mistakes, that makes us rigid. I want us to get out of that rigid place. Crying is a good thing. If that's your thing, find it. Cry if you have to. It's okay. You can even schedule time to cry for all the hurts that you received, or how sensitive you felt, or what you didn't like about this week. Find a time, sit down, cry, get it out. That's what I'm talking about. You know, find a hobby. What do you like to do? Do you like to garden? Do you like to read? Do you like to go get your nails done? Whatever it is, find time to do it. Can you buy yourself a present? I'm not talking about big, outrageous things. I'm talking about little, small things that make you happy. How about buying yourself a present? Can be as small as getting a picture duplicated at Walmart so that you can put it on your desk at work so you can see the smiling faces of the people that you love. Cuddling with other people, or letting other people cuddle you, if that's your thing, that's fine. Or cuddling with your pet, that's fine. We need that connection, and that's what emotional is about. The emotional spoke is about connecting. That is what all this is about. Okay. Spiritual. What inspires you? Where do you get your sense of wonder from? Your sense of curiosity? How do you foster self-forgiveness? And that goes to your self-compassion and the emotional. Where does that come from? How do you get this? I'm not talking about religion here. I'm talking about that sense of wonder, that sense of curiosity, that sense of something bigger than you happened. And how does it manifest in you? Some people do it through self-expression or reflection. Some people sing or dance or do the arts. They get inspired by something. How do you do it? How do you take what you have and make it into something that's bigger than yourself so that other people can enjoy? Okay. Personal. What do you like? Do you know what you like? Do you know what you dislike? Do you know what you like to eat? Or do you just eat because it's a habit and you eat the same thing every day without really tasting it? Stop it. Learn who you are. Learn what you like. Yes, I will send out the PowerPoints after. Learn what you like. Learn who you are. Learn a new skill. Learn a new language. Keep your head open. Take your vacation time each year. Take mental health days. If you're sick, stay home. Don't bring it to the office and spread that sickness around. Nobody needs that. And if your coworker's sick, encourage them to go home. We don't want the flu decimating our staff. Nobody wants that. Can you make a vision board? Do you know what a vision board is? It doesn't have to be created on a piece of paper. You can create it in your mind's eye. You can sketch it if you want. You can do whatever you want. But where is your goal and how are you going to get there? You know, these are things that are really, really, really important for us to be healthy, to have that sense of resiliency in our life, of bouncing back. Okay. Oh, professional. Take your lunch and take it not at your desk. I don't know how guilty I am of this. I generally eat at my desk, and that is a bad thing. Go outside, walk around the block. I'm not going to talk about vitamin D at work, but just leaving for a few minutes, changing your perspective so you can come back and tackle something else. Let it go. Sometimes I find for me that when I stop thinking about something for 5 minutes or so, I come back and I have an answer, or I figure out another way to look at that. Okay. Um, what I do when I talk about leave work at work, I used to take my work home with me, and I would think about constantly. I'd worry about the people I was working with, and especially when I was doing direct services. Did this one go there? Did this person go there? Does this person safe? Did they get enough? What happened? I needed to stop that. So one of my friends, who I love her dearly, I'm not a yoga person. What she told me to do was to go up to the door jamb of my office every day before I leave, to put my hand on the door jamb and to say to the door jamb, I honor your existence, and please, please, please take all of the work out of me, everything that I am thinking about work, so I can drive home safely, have time with my family, and when I come back tomorrow, I will put my hands and take it all back from you. Thank you. And for me, that works. I don't know if it will work for anyone else. I gave it a try. It worked. That's great. How do you leave work at work for you? Giving and getting support from your colleagues is important. Asking them from their point of view, being able to offer that, you know, being able to offer that. Mental health days, we've talked about your sick days, we've talked about that. But getting professional trainings, I can't tell you how many times I've been fortunate enough to go take a training or to go to a conference and listen to a session that really, really, really inspired me, only to come back and not be able to implement that at my work. And that has, because I got sucked back into what was there. There is a method or a belief out there that says that if you go and you take a training and you listen and you hear good ideas and you don't implement them, within 2 weeks you will have forgotten them. So I'm going to encourage you to take what you have learned or figured out about yourself in this training and do more than just think about it. Do something, and do it once a day for a while. Okay, we have the relaxation and stress reduction, meditation, body scans. I talk about medication, but it's meditation the way that you want it to do. This part of the spoke is about basic self-care. We make basic self-care complicated because we get in our own way. I don't like meditation or yoga, personally, for me, because I'm a more active person. I'm more somatic in that way. And staying still, quote unquote, is not a joy for me. It is torture. I know that when I walk, I tend to let my mind wander. And if you want to call that meditation, fine. That's my form of meditation. And sometimes I've noticed that I wander, and by the time I get back home, I've walked a couple of miles, and that's fine. Okay, body scans. When I'm doing a body scan, I will start with, how are my toes feeling? They feel good, check, move on up. How's the ball of my feet moving? Check, move on up, until I identify a body part that may be feeling uncomfortable. So by the time I get to my knee may say, oh, my left knee is hurting. Well, what is that about? Oh, I've been sitting here for over 5 hours and I haven't moved. I've been so intent on doing what I'm doing that I then say, oh, I need to stand up and walk or stretch or do something like that. Every culture has informal practices. Everybody and every culture means you, your family as well. What's yours? What's your informal practice of relaxation and stress reduction? All right. One of the things that I grew up with was baseball. I love baseball. One of my ways for relaxation and stress reduction is to go to a baseball game. The other thing that I used to do was I used to manage a little league baseball team, and that to me was so much fun, watching those kids learn. That is great. So what I'm talking about is, you know, music. What kind of music do you listen to, or do you like to listen to? Figuring out, experiment with what reduces your stress, and then slowly start adding it into your routine. Breathing exercises are good. We have to remember to breathe. I was recently taught this at a training. It is part of a yoga exercise, so I don't mind borrowing, but you take your thumb and you take your fourth finger and you put your thumb over your, let's just say your right nostril, and you breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4 through your left nostril, and then you let it, then you plug up your left nostril and breathe out you plug up your left nostril through your, with your ring finger of your hand, and you blow it out, and then you keep switching from side to side. You do it 2 or 3 times on one side and then switch it to the other side, always using your thumb and your fourth finger, and it resets and gives you a calmness, and you can try that if you like. So I'm into stuff like that that I can do quickly and that helps me. All right. I love this picture, and I like the saying, bloom where you're planted. And if we're planted in this work, and this is the work that you love to do and want to do, then is there a client whose story has profoundly inspired you, touched you in a positive way? How do you honor that client with the work you do? How do you move forward with that? How can you make that happen for you? Is there someone in your professional field whom you see as extremely resilient, especially if they've been in this field for over 8 years or so? Can you ask them, if you can interview them and ask them what they do in order to be resilient? What has kept them here? What has inspired them? How have they honored themselves? That kind of stuff. Because when we hear that, when we know that, sometimes it gives us ideas on how we want to move forward with our time here and what we want to do and how we want to do it. Okay? I will tell you that recovery from exposure, this is from the Joyful Heart Foundation, is possible, and it's painful. I had a client once who told me, how do you spell growth? P-A-I-N. But it's also, I would say, not just discovering new inner strengths, it's also defining a new norm and a new definition of yourself. So I'm here, I'm available. I will be sending out, I'm so sorry, I will be sending out the PowerPoint. If you email me for PowerPoints, please email me. And here's the email. Here it is. That's the resources. And thank you. I am going to put up the post tests. Please take them. I encourage you to take that. And in the post test, okay. And you should be seeing the post test now and hearing me. I thank you for your time and attention today. Please take the post test. In about an hour, you will have the, you will receive in your email the follow-up email that contains the evaluation and a link to the certificate of attendance. If you need CEs for social work or LPCs, please email uh, webinars@taasa.org. Thank you so much for your time and attention today.